about this specific project is both historic theaters in Harrisonburg are now private parking lots. We have no other area, and this project for me is very important because of the fact that we're giving back to the community what it once had, but unfortunately it's now gone due to the property owner's desire to make parking.
Let me ask you a question. I can see the timing on my paper here. Might have got the right sheet. We've been having a discussion up here earlier about tightening these up. Doug Allen, of course, has brought that up. Could you tell us how this is tightened up as you would, or do you think it's tightened enough based on our conversations earlier?
Mr. Chairman, based on the testimony, the one criteria that they can meet is about that it's been rehabilitated in accordance with historic preservation standards. So I think that can be added into the bill and not do any harm to this particular venue. And then this a bill you haven't considered, Delegate Abel's bill that talks about sort of tightening it about when it can be sold. You know, that it has to be advanced sales. Also, you can serve now before and an hour and a half after the type of one. If you choose to go that way, Mr. Chairman.
Doug Allen?
Chairman, when we've given these exemptions, we've given these exemptions in the past because the people who renovate these buildings are taking on a great cost that the other type of venue would not. Having preserved a historic home myself, I can tell you it's not a no-brainer. So I like to put in the same type of criteria that it be a historic building, kind of the same as we did with the other ones. So I make that motion for amendment.
Look, Maria, could you read this?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, the amendment would be on the last page of the bill, at line 156, and you would insert this language. Has been rehabilitated in accordance with historic preservation standards. And then I've got to renumber it a little bit.
Okay. We know what you're getting at. We
Yeah.
got,
It appears there, and if you look at the exemption, I mean, the license under number 15 at 136, that same language at line 139 and 140 is what would be inserted.
okay. So it's the typical language.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Delegate Allen, you made the motion.
Second.
And we have a second. All in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We have the amended bill before us. Anyone else here to speak in favor of this measure? Mr. Lewis?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. Tom List, representing the Virginia Restaurant Lodging and Travel Association. And we certainly applaud the efforts to rehab these historic buildings, but as I spoke with Delegate Wilk earlier in the week, our concern solely is the lack of a food sale requirement. We're creating more licenses that allow the unlimited sale of alcohol without any corresponding food requirement, which is an absolute condition of restaurants holding licenses. For the National Norva, if you look in lines 140 to 142, there was a food requirement established for those facilities. It sounds like in this facility they will have a kitchen. It may not operate as a traditional restaurant, but it would be permitted by the health department as a kitchen and would be able to operate in terms of restaurant selling food. And we would just suggest that, in fairness, that there should be a corresponding food requirement for this facility as well.
Can you remind us what the food requirement for Norva and the National was?
Yeah, it's the $4,000 a month minimum food requirement, which includes, of that, at least $2,000 must be in the form of meals, in some form. But meals could be pizza, it could be hot dog and fries. I mean, it's not a strenuous requirement to meet, and most concert venues typically will be selling some kind of food during a concert at that time. And certainly if they're doing special events, banquets, things like that, they would be producing food that would probably meet meal standards as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, to address that's a very good point. Joe, while we're sitting here. I think it makes sense, we've got to be consistent. The minute we decide that this section doesn't meet that same standard that we put in for the national, the Norva, everyone after it is going to say the same thing. And so, Maria, I'm trying to find in the bill, just so I can put my eyes on it, where that standard language might be.
For the food sales,
Right.
look at line 140 through 142. Number 4 in the whole has monthly gross receipts from the sale of food cooked or prepared and consumed on the premises and non-alcoholic beverages served on the premises that meet or exceeds the monthly minimum established by board regulations for mixed beverage licenses. That gets you to the 4,000.
One thing I'd like to say, if possible, on that. I appreciate and I understand completely in regards to the requirement of food sales being an integral part of some of these others. And the issue is all of the others that you mentioned are actually in much, much larger population centers. It's very easy, in fact, for $4,000 worth of food to be sold at a venue, like you mentioned as such. Our population is probably about 10 times less than what the population is in regards to those locales that you just mentioned. So if we want to look at being fair, I'm absolutely all for that, but I think also too, the threshold should be considerate of the population that you're talking about.
Travis, or what is the rule on bringing food in? Like, I know that most restaurants really don't eat, like, they don't make a lot of their food, they buy it from US Foods and it comes in and they heat it up and that still counts as an entree, but when are you getting around the ABC laws by bringing food in from someplace else?
Mr. Chairman, the food needs to be prepared on the premises. So generally, Delegate Wilt did ask me earlier today about food trucks. We wouldn't count that towards the food qualifications. It's being prepared by someone else. You might go out and buy that from the food truck and then bring it back in, but that wouldn't count towards your food purchase requirements.
Next follow-up question, if I may. So a friend of mine is a cook at a pretty big restaurant chain in Northern Virginia, and he says that a lot of the things they buy pre-made from US Foods or Cisco, so they don't make the cannolis there. They buy it from Cisco, they put it in their freezer, and then when somebody orders, they put it on the table. And I'm assuming that that is considered serving the food at the restaurant.
That is considered, and that's something that in a circular letter we issued earlier, or it was in 2016, we expanded the definition so that we would include, because we acknowledge there are meals that people buy frozen, they microwave it on premises, and then they serve it, but we consider that food that is prepared on the premises for consumption.
Yeah, so they have a full certification, right?
Mr. Chairman, no expert in the math associated with this, but Tony, how many events might we expect to see at this 900 person? Is this the 900 person venue? How many events do we see in a given month?
It might be 2 to 4. It might be 2 to 4 per week is what we would be, somewhere between 2 and 4, no more than 4. And they would be of varying sizes, so not every event would sure be 100.
I'll give you a heads up on what we're wrestling with. What we're wrestling with is, we typically have a minimum threshold of $4,000 on food. And if you did have 2 times 4 weeks, 8 events a month, $500 average per event, that gets you to your $4,000. That's what we're wrestling with up here. It'd make it real easy on us if you told us that you could meet the $4,000 threshold a month. We might have to put it on you anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I did the math the other way. If you've got 2 times 4 weeks times 500 people, not even 900, you're at 4,000 people there per month. If 10% of them buy a $10 appetizer,
you know, an appetizer would qualify for that, you know? That's the thing. This isn't gonna be a sit-down restaurant. As long as we can establish this project without having a sit-down restaurant during the day, then we will be fine. And certainly $4,000 is doable for us.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I mean, starting out in a brand new project like this, you know, the thought of a full-blown kitchen, and so just that enters us in, you know, the whole new set of concerns as far as the health department, you know, all that. We can get the food brought in and meet the threshold that way. I mean, we're seeing that all the time now with various venues, you know, even having food trucks. I know that doesn't go to it, but the ultimate concern that developed from that whole issue was that we don't want to create bars and people just coming in solely to drink. And so, you know, I would say, I know it's spelled out, but as long as we're getting food there one way or the other and gonna meet that threshold of sales, to me, that would go a long ways in meeting the concern that you have, even though it technically wasn't handmade there.
Well, I think what's probably gonna happen, is I think we're probably gonna have to probably put $4,000 threshold on there, and you have to have a working kitchen, and you're gonna have to talk to ABC, but if you bring the food in and you warm it up in there, that's prepared on the site. Kelly Robinson?
Mr. Chairman, I just had a question because, and I could be wrong on this because haven't been on this committee very long. And if you look at line 146 down to 152, the venue for the city of Waynesboro, it was 550 patrons. It does not have the food requirement on that one. So didn't we establish the size of the venue? Wasn't it discussion last year on the size of the number of people?
Ask you a question. Roxanne says on line 146, there's a managed where they had a place with about 500 patrons, so they didn't have a food requirement on there. Is that right?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that was an enactment from last year. Delegate Dickie Bell, they were rehabbing the old theater in Waynesboro. And so, yeah, there was not, that limitation wasn't put in on that license.
Thank you, Delegate Robinson, for bringing that to the attention. Let me ask this, is anyone else here to speak in favor of this measure? Anyone here to speak in opposition? Okay, we'll get the discussion back within the panel. Delegate Allen,
Move to report as amended.
do I have a second? And there's a second in discussion. All, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, just so we're clear, we're talking about the amendment that adds this language here that we see in 141, 142, 142.
Historic preservation, language.
And food, and that's what I want to make sure, we're talking about the food language and the historic preservation language. I think they're two amendments.
I think we can probably do it in one, I'll try, whatever. But it's both the historic rehabilitation and the food.
Are both of these amendments properly before us? Maria?
Yes, sir.
They are,
Yes.
okay. Any discussion? Measures before us, all in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Your bill passes with the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members.
We have Delegate Albo, House Bill 1526.
We have a substitute proposed. Mr. Chairman, I'll move the substitute.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, substitute is properly
the food ratio, because people don't go to the performing arts place and sit down and eat steak and broccoli and then watch the show, okay? And this has been going on for a while. We've been chipping away and chipping away and chipping away at it, and everybody's been asking for special permission. Last year, we gave this permission to a place across the street called the National and the Norva. And if you recall, there was a guy who came here from a club, and he was pretty mad, and I would have to say that he made a compelling argument to me. He said, how come those guys now don't have to have a ratio, and I do, and I'm a performing arts facility, but I'm just not as big, and I can't afford, you know, to come down here and petition the government and change for just me. And it puts me at a competitive disadvantage, and it's not fair. And I had, you know, same thing, he's exactly right. It was my bill, but he was exactly right. So this summer, we met an ABC study committee, and I was trying to figure out how you could make it fair for everyone and not have to sit here every year and do what we just did with Delegate Will's bill, where you keep on adding more exceptions. So the idea was to create a separate license called Performing Arts Facility License. The idea with that license would be that it would be, I have live music here, I think we might want to make it just performing arts, because if you had ballet, theater, you know, any live performance, it still meets my idea. I also did not want to do the thing where they would just totally abandon the restaurant requirement, because I really don't want to create bars. And so what we did in this bill is we said you still have to have a full-service restaurant, you have to serve food, you have to serve at least $6,000 of food per month, but you don't have to meet a ratio. So that's the exception. Let's see if I can find the page 23.
That's where the amendments are.
So basically, what we do here is we make it look exactly like Delegate Will's bill, but it applies to anybody. It's going to apply to anybody who has a performing arts facility. My original version of this bill eliminated all the other exemptions we've done, but just to play it safe and to make sure I wasn't ruining their business model, I decided to keep it back in. But the idea here would be, if you like it, then we would just have this, and when people come to us, say, no, you've already got a code section here, you can import your business plan to what's already in the Virginia code. Because it seems to me right now, the business plan is get your delegate to put a special bill in, and then the government will go ahead and do what you want them to do. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be the people of Virginia tell you what the rules are, and then you comport your behavior to what the people of Virginia want you to do. Now, remember I said earlier about every time you pass a law, you have to think about how cheaters will do it? So as soon as I had this idea, I was thinking, oh, I know what I do. I'll just rent some lousy hole-in-the-wall place in Springfield and stick my brother on saxophone in the corner and call it a performing arts facility. So I had to think of a way to make it what I really envision. And what I envision is a place where people buy tickets in advance. And because it's a show, and it's a show of somebody who's at least of enough renown that people would want to pay money to see them. And that you had to buy the tickets in advance, because otherwise the cheaters would just charge everybody $5 to see Steve Aldo play his saxophone in the corner. By the way, it would suck. But, don't tell my brother I said that. But then I wanted to be able to have some walk-in business, so I just picked 90% out of thin air. I could do less than that if someone thought that 90% was too high. Also, I didn't want somebody to have Steve Alba play saxophone on a stool for an hour and then be able to serve alcohol all day without any other rules. And so I said that you would be able to serve your alcohol an hour before the performance, an hour after the performance. So I think it's pretty tight. Now, this is not one of those bills that I'm really asking everybody to vote for. I just thought it was a good idea. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, then we can continue doing what we've been doing and getting first thing I'd like to offer is to change it from live music to just call it performing arts. And I'd like to know whether you, members of the committee, think that that term performing arts is well enough to define.
We can define, performing arts, what performing arts is, so that's theater, dance, comedy, music,
Okay, let's do that. Okay, so we'll be able to find definition in the code of performing arts that means that. So I would make a motion to amend the thing to strike the word live music and create a definition of performing arts, which basically includes human beings doing performance art.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, I have a second on that. All in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
That amendment's before us.
Okay, now, second thing would be, if I may ask Mr. Liskey questions. Do you think at some point during the session, that you can find out from some of your clients about how many tickets they sell in advance versus at the door?
Yes, Mr. Alba, I certainly would be happy to do that. I know that some, it varies from event to event. The more popular events are often sold out in advance, so you meet the 90% threshold. Less popular events, particularly sometimes venues will bring startup bands in where the bands have to sell the tickets, but there usually are a lot of gate sales that would fall below the 9%, but we can see if we can get some statistics regarding that.
Mr. Chairman, you whispered in my ear, you feel better than, say 75, and so that might be a way we could have a placeholder and just call it 75 in the meantime, if that's all right. So I would make a motion to change it to 75% advance.
Have a second on it?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
And Delegate Alva, just one other thing I'd like to bring to your attention on the $6,000. We just said 4,000 altogether.
What's the more benefit, 4,000?
What more was it?
Yeah, under the current law, the norm is at 4,000, and you just impose 4,000 on the Harrisburg facility.
That's what I do there.
Move the amendment.
Okay, the amendment is to make it go from 6,000 to 4,000 or substitute. Do I have a second? All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Does anyone up here have any other amendments? Okay. We have the amendments before us.
I'm done with my presentation.
Is there any discussion amongst up here? Is anyone out there in favor, speaking in favor of this bill?
Mr. Chairman, Tom List, representing the Virginia Restaurant Lodging and Travel Association. I'm not sure that we're in favor, but I'm not sure we're opposed. I think conceptually, we think this is maybe the right direction to go in. We're not sure, notwithstanding your action on the previous bill, we're not sure that $4,000 a month is the right number. We're aware that there was a summer-long study by a joint subcommittee of this committee and one from the other body that looked at possible legislation to deal with what's been an ongoing issue about food sales and requirements for food sales. And then that study group came up with a recommendation of $10,000 a month, and then there was a ratio, which is really what you're talking about here for the Norva, the National, the Harrisburg facility. And our position would be to ask you to consider, if you're looking for a uniform standard, then that may be the better standard to use, just food for thought. Beyond that, our position fundamentally is philosophically that food has to be paired with the sale of alcohol. That we don't want to see the creation of bars. There have been too many exceptions to date to allowing the sale of alcohol with no food requirement. And so we're happy to see that as part of this. But as you're aware, there's this ongoing issue about how much food should be required of restaurants and ratios. And so this plays into that as you create standards that are separate and apart from restaurants. And so it's a sticky wicket, and we appreciate the Delegate Alva's attempts to try to come up with some uniform standard and get away from this piecemeal approach that will encourage year after year more special legislation.
Mr. Lisk, on that special subcommittee we had down there, we knew the minimum had to be 4,000, and we said the recommendation passed was between 4,000 and 10,000 for a ratio.
For a ratio.
Everything over 10,000 was no longer a requirement, but we did not specifically say for performing arts centers.
That's right. All I was suggesting is that if you came up with a possibly get away from even having to create these special licenses for music venues. But obviously, there's no bill before this subcommittee on that topic, so I'll leave it at that. And if I may, just for a moment, I just would offer this comment for Delegate Albo and then something to think about. And we appreciate the attempts to grandfather in some of these other facilities, and I'm not here representing any of those facilities, but I would just make you aware that the limitation of no more than 4 nights a week would mean that some facilities, such as the Altria Theater, formerly known as the Mosque, the original Landmark Theater, and the Dominion Theater at 6th Street, 6th and Grace here in Richmond, would no longer qualify for their licenses. They have events, often times more than 4 times a week. The National and Orville often have events more than 4 times a week. So while it's an attempt to grandfather, in fact, it would not grandfather those facilities, and there may be others that's similarly situated.
Mr. Chairman, just to be clear, I didn't do anything about creating the theater, right? I mean, this is
No.
just new.
This bill would actually impact them. The authorizing language for the Altria Theater and the Dominion Theater is on lines 596 to 604. And by sweeping them in, because they're references of performing arts facility, and therefore they'd be subject to the definition that you created in 4.1100. So they too would be subject to the advanced ticket sales, the limit of 4 nights a week, and et cetera.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, motion to be confused.
Second.
Okay, so can you show me on the substitute, are you saying line of the substitute is line what?
Yeah, on the substitute, lines 596 through 604 is the authorizing language for the Altria Theater and the Dominion Theater. And because in 596, it's labeled a performing arts facility, it would then be subject to your definition of performing arts facility.
Mr. Chairman?
Sorry, not to complicate things, but just
No, that's fine.
want to be aware of it.
You're right, Tom, you caught it, you caught a mistake. The way to fix that would be to keep the language the way it is and then create a new,
If
is there 14, we could do a 14A and a 14B, or you could create a whole new section, Maria, what do you think would be better?
for your paragraph 17, where you're creating the new license, if you gave it a name other than performing arts facility, and then give a definition of that new name, that would grandfather all of the other facilities while creating the new license that I think you're seeking.
Yeah, I think that's probably easier. That's what we call it. Performing arts venue.
Live entertainment venue, or rather, you're coming up with all kinds of possibilities.
Live entertainment venue, that's good. Well, that kind of sounds like it.
I wish I had planned this one.
I like it. Live entertainment venue. Okay, so I would make that motion to change the name of this thing from performing arts to a live entertainment venue.
Second.
Second.
All in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Happy to answer any questions.
Anyone else in the audience to speak to this matter?
I had a quick comment in regards to the ticket sales. I asked that the committee just consider when they look, I know 75 is sort of a placeholder, but I would ask that you consider in large venues, almost all of the ticket sales are pre-sold. However, in regards to medium and small venues, oftentimes many of the ticket sales are not pre-sold, they're sold the day of. The reason for this is because these smaller venues, those people, even if it is a larger act, they know that the venue will never sell out. So because of that, they don't buy their ticket ahead of time. So this is just something to think about and consider. And in fact, I know of a few theaters, music venues that currently do not have a ratio of 75% in pre-sold tickets that already have their ABC license. That will even fall under the designation of the live music venue that you just stated, that are currently operating today and do not meet that 75% criteria. I just thought I'd share that.
Thanks for confusing us.
figured that when you had a set of rules in the code, that the venue will create a system to make sure that they're able to sell these in advance. And the chairman just mentioned, what is the definition of ticket sales in advance? Because you might be able to say, show starts at 8, and if you sold the tickets at the door at 7:59,
That counts.
say, I don't want that. Travis, you know,
As the regulatory entity, I was gonna ask, you all what you would interpret as pre-sold events, because that's something that we would have to account for, in looking at someone's records to see if they continue to qualify. Was
how about 12 hours? Must be sold. 75% of tickets must be sold prior to 12 hours before the show.
Yeah, I think, well, I think you could just say, purchase at least 12 hours in advance.
Can you write some bills or something like that?
Yeah.
I like that better. I think that.
Second.
Okay, everyone understand, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Done this for us. Okay, there's no other discussion from the audience? Any more discussion? Back to the committee? What's your pleasure? Okay, there's a motion to report as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion, any opposed?
No, aye.
Make sure we got it right.
What we have left here now is, me and Dr. Robinson. Let's see if I can find,
Hey, Delegate Knight, you have what bill number?
let's do 1801 first. And Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, House Bill 1801 goes to, we have a growing number of grocery stores, Safeway, Walmart, Kroger, et cetera. They're offering customers the convenience of online ordering and coming and having curbside pickup of these groceries in the parking lot of the grocery store. And about 31% of U.S. shoppers has bought groceries this way. And typically, the customer or the consumer place an order online, arrive at a pre-appointed time in the parking lot, park in a designated spot. A store employee will come out and bring your groceries to you, but they cannot at this time bring you alcoholic beverages, beer and wine. So what this bill does is it allows the grocery store on their premises to bring the beer and wine to your car with the rest of the groceries. And ironically, they can bring these groceries with beer and wine to your house, but they can't deliver them to you in the parking lot. So my bill rectifies the situation. So, yeah, William, chair.
Oh, sure, that's right. So ask Maria a question. So when a grocery store is licensed for to serve alcohol on the licensed premises would be, I assume, behind the front door. So when it says if you can deliver to a person on licensed premises, the parking lot's not licensed premises. Tom, do you have an answer to that?
That's correct, and that's why it refers to retailer's premises, because while the retail premises is more expansive than licensed premises. Oftentimes, only a portion of the retailer's premises is actually covered by the license.
Wouldn't we have to say on line 172, to a person on the retailer's premises?
I don't believe so, because if you see
I disagree with you.
Okay, you're probably right, I'm probably wrong.
Only happens here, doesn't happen at 8108 Ox Road, I can tell you that. May deliver such wine or beer to a person on the licensed premises. That person's not on the licensed premises when the delivery happens, right?
Well, I don't see the licensed premises you're referring to except under one little I, which is separate from two little I's.
Yeah, that's right. May deliver such wine or beer to a person on the licensed premises.
One little I is simply a restatement of current law. Two little I is what is adding new authority.
I think we could get rid, I think Maria's right, I think we could get rid of one little I, it doesn't mean anything to me. May deliver such beer or wine to such person's vehicle if located in a designated parking area.
We have to say those containers.
Yeah, there is a technical amendment to meet a concern from the ABC board. Maria has a copy of that amendment.
Person,
May deliver, we would. The First Amendment on line 172, after the little one, strike the remainder of 172 and 173, and the two Romanet, and then insert enclosed containers for off-premises consumption to such person's vehicle, somewhere in there.
could you read that whole first?
Yeah, it's gonna have to get remembered. The whole, okay, so it would read, notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary, persons granted a wine and beer license pursuant to this section may deliver such wine or beer, one, enclosed containers for off-premises consumption to such person's vehicle if located in a designated parking area of the retailer's premises where such person has electronically ordered wine or beer in advance of the delivery, or two, if the licensee holds a delivery permit issued pursuant to 4.1212, such other locations.
Okay,
Yeah.
so move, is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded to adopt that amendment, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, amendment's adopted. Okay, Kelly Knight, any more presentation?
I don't.
I'm sorry, Kelly agrees to.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a newbie question here? Can a 16-year-old pick up the food order with the alcohol and enclosed beverage? Can I send Matthew to go pick up the groceries at 17, senior high school? What's the law say about that?
The law for off-premise licensees, such as grocery stores, does allow employees under the age of 18 to deliver wine and beer. Most businesses choose not to, but because many smaller convenience and grocery stores are family-owned and operated, the law has never required an age limit of the delivery of beer the way it does for restaurants. For restaurants, you must be 18, just like ours.
Mr. Chairman, maybe ask the question a little way, so I'm good with that part of it, so, but the person that I sent from my house to drive, so my son who's 16 has his license, can he pick it up?
My understanding is no, he cannot. Maria's shaking her head otherwise.
Not with the permission of the parent, they can.
With the permission of parent, an underage person, an 18-year-old, could transport alcohol with the permission and direction of a parent. But the underage person can't accept the delivery of alcohol from a licensed retailer.
Correct.
So if a person of legal age accepted the delivery of the wine or beer under current law, that underage person could transport it for a parent at the parent's direction.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm not trying to muck up Mr. Chairman's bill. This whole thing about an electronic order, my kids are pretty smart, right? So they're gonna go online, they're gonna order crackers and beer. They're gonna tell you that they have my permission, not my kids, let's use Luke's kids. Hypothetically. But you see where I'm going with this, right? So who's responsible for getting the permission,
It still
go
has-
check their ID, like how's that
It
process?
still has to be a 21-year-old that receives the delivery of the alcohol from the retailer.
Mr. Chairman, last question. Is the 18-year-old who's coming from Giant to walk outside with the groceries to the designated retail parking spot gonna ask for the ID of the driver who's accepting the groceries?
In most cases,
Theoretically.
yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any other members of the committee have any questions? Any members of the audience want to speak forward against the bill? Is there a motion on the bill?
I'll move to report.
Second, is there? Moved and seconded, all those in favor reporting signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. 1-1.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Chairman, my bill number is 1842. This is the bill that we heard last year about 151 proof clear alcohol. We sold in the state of Virginia. And to give you some background, we sell 7 or 8 spirits of 151 or greater proof in the state of Virginia now. We and Vermont are the only 2 states that aren't allowed to sell this now. This bill passed overwhelmingly the House and the Senate. When it got to the governor, we had the Virginia College Alcohol Leadership Team raised some concerns. So we had a meeting with them, Secretary Moran, Hazel, and Trent. You recognize who they are. We talked about this, talked through it, and the leadership team said they would not oppose this bill as a committee, provided there was an additional 5-year sunset clause on this bill that was approved last year. I put sunset clause on it, so I asked for the identical bill with the sunset clause that we approved last year to be approved again.
Can you tell me who the group was that, Virginia College Alcohol Leadership Team? That's a group that's against alcohol?
That's a group that I believe is against college drinking. And anyways, we also, within the concerns of the committee, we told them that the ABC board stores in Virginia can put certain alcohols in certain stores and certain alcohols not in certain stores. So if they so want to, I'm sure their board, they can say, we're not going to put 151 if we have concern with it within X amount of miles around the college campus. They have that authority.
Is the Virginia College Alcohol Leadership Team comprised of representatives of the colleges, or is it just a group of independent people?
They do have some colleges that were represented.
Any members of the committee have any questions? Any members of the audience want to speak for or against the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Phil Abraham, representing Lusco, beverage alcohol manufacturer located in St. Louis, Missouri. They manufacture a number of alcoholic beverages, including the 151 clear liquor product. I'm not going to repeat what Delegate Knight said. We agree with his arguments. Just to make a few additional points. At the time Virginia put this prohibition into effect, the only kind of clear alcohol product that was being sold was a 190 proof product. The 151 proof product wasn't being manufactured, and this was in response to concerns with that higher proof product. All neighboring jurisdictions sell at least a 151 proof product, many 190 proof product. North Carolina, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and the District of Columbia. We estimate the Commonwealth will generate an additional $700,000 in net revenues by the sale of this product. Delegate Knight mentioned the work group that the governor had commissioned to look into this issue, along with the Virginia College Alcohol Leadership Council that was discussed. The group was staffed by ABC and led by Secretaries Moran, Trent, and Hazel, and they made 3 interesting findings in their report. First, that they found 125 or greater proof products have a markup that's 12 to 15% higher markup than lower proof products, and this addresses concern that this might be a lower price product that college students tend to purchase. They also noted that of the 4 states that ABC found deal with these type of products by statute, only Virginia prohibits the sale of 151 proof clear liquor. And Health and Human Resources Secretary Hazel, they noted, saw a lack of evidence showing a direct correlation between the sale of this product and the concerns presented by those who opposed the bill last year. Finally, as Belvin and I mentioned, there's nothing in this bill to restrict ABC's ability to decide which stores they will sell it, how they will market it. And for those reasons, we will support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have a motion when you're ready for it. Move to report House Bill 1842.
Second.
Moving to second to report, all those in favor of reporting say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, bill is recommended for report. You're the chairman again.
I'm the chairman again. Okay. I believe the only bill we have left is Delegate Robinson. Are you ready? Okay. This is House Bill 2010.
Good afternoon. This is House Bill 2010. You all are probably very familiar with it. I've had many people come and talk to you. This is to allow internet lottery ticket sales by Virginia Lottery. And it's a really tiny little bill. It's 14 words. Okay. And the bill is actually all included in lines 33 and 34. And so that kind of sums it up right there. The Commonwealth is always looking for additional funding for K-12 dollars. And the Virginia Lottery in 2016 provided 8% of the K-12 budget. So what we'd like to be able to do is see that funding grow, obviously. And we're always looking for another creative way to do so. And so the lottery has come up with this idea to allow same-day ticket sales of the large games, the Powerball and the Mega Millions. They think that projected profits will grow steadily over time, but they think in the first year, they might add an additional $3 million to education, 3 years, $14 million, and 5 years, $25 million. They've been selling subscription lottery tickets over the internet for 10 years. And you have to do that, you had to buy a certain number of weeks and draws to do that. So this bill, again, allows for that same-day ticket sale. So if you're on your way home and you forgot to buy your ticket, you can buy your ticket. If it's snowing and you can't get to the store, you can still buy your ticket. It allows just for another avenue. The other thing is our demographics are changing. I think that your younger people who would be interested aren't necessarily going to stop and buy a ticket, but they may do it over for fun. So that will help increase those dollars coming into education. The lotteries worked really hard, to be very secure, make sure they're age verified, include responsible gaming provisions similar to the current safeguards for the subscription sales that they have. And it's worked closely with retailers who are concerned about additional online offerings impacting their brick and mortar. So the lottery is confident that with several programs to help retailers maintain and grow their sales, current retailers will not be impacted. So I am going to, I'd like for that to be, talk a little more about what they're going to do for retailers. And the executive director of Virginia Lottery is going to Paul Otto to kind of address what they'll do for the brick and mortars to keep them whole.
Any questions over Robinson this time? Okay. Director Otto?
Thank you, Delegate Robinson, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Paula Otto, Executive Director of the Lottery. You are having distributed to you a brief handout, just to remind you of a couple of the figures that Delegate Robinson just told you. This could be 20 $25 million in additional profits for K through 12 by year 5, and double that in year 10. And we think those are pretty conservative estimates. We have had an emphasis the last few years on growing responsibly. We continue to need more money for our schools. We think it's more responsible to have more players spending a few dollars instead of the same players spending more, and being allowed to do more on the internet will help us do that. Not surprisingly, we think young people in particular would embrace this way of purchasing tickets. We find in our current subscription system, which we've had for 10 years now over the internet, in addition to younger people, Northern Virginians buy more tickets on the internet than any other part of the state. That's an area where we have traffic problems, of course, as many of the delegates know, and we don't have as many retailers. We did a survey in 2015 as a part of the internet study that the Senate asked us to do, and we saw that 82% of Virginians said they think it's appropriate for the lottery to do more on the internet, and also said they would be interested in purchasing. We did another survey just a few months ago of 1,000 Virginians, and we posed the question this way. Virginia allows fantasy sports, which is done solely on the internet. Virginia allows you to bet on the horses using your credit cards on the internet. Knowing that, is it acceptable for the lottery to be played on the internet? 85% said it is acceptable. The next slide is a powerful partnership. We have 5,300 brick and mortar retailers in Virginia. They are the ones who sell the tickets. We absolutely understand their concerns. We have worked very hard since 2015, when we did the study, to reach out to them, to partner with them, to have them help us figure out how we keep them whole. You can see from the red line that they earned $110 million in commissions last year. We are so confident that if we can do more on the internet, it will not hurt the brick and mortar retailers, that one of our ideas is to guarantee to them that they will continue to grow. Just a reminder that we spend millions of dollars every year at retail with point of sale, with the technology. We're doing a huge technology refresh this year. None of that will change. The advertising that supports what's sold at retail will continue. And finally, the last slide is some hard data from 3 other states that allow the type of internet activity that we would envision here in Virginia. And most important are those blue arrows that show you that their annual growth rate at retail has actually gone up since they have done more on the internet. The additional awareness, the cross promotions to drive folks back to retail all help with that. And then this is a quick recap of the 4 things that we would do to ensure that retailers stay whole. The 5 cents on the dollar would go back to retail. We would not keep that. As I mentioned, we would guarantee that they would maintain the same growth that they've had over the last 10 years. We would also give traditional retailers an opportunity to sell game cards. So these would be credits that you could use to establish your internet account, but you buy it at retail. So that means you come into retail. And perhaps most importantly, guaranteeing exclusivity to brick and mortar retailers for the daily games, Pick 3 and Pick 4. Those are games that are drawn twice a day, 7 days a week. They're 30% of our business. We would not sell those on the internet. We would require players to continue to go to retail. Again, I know that retailers are concerned about it. We absolutely want to be partners and figure it out together. We have been to 7-Eleven's headquarters in Dallas twice in the last 6 months to work with them, and I'm very confident that we can. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Otto, thank you for your presentation. You and I talked prior, and I didn't hear it in the comments from Delegate Robinson or in your comments about my concern with the individual sitting in his basement just buying tickets over and over and over again. Can you give me some comfort on why that might not be a problem, where I think it is going to be a problem?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman, Delegate Greason. We currently, with our internet subscription system, have limits. We have age verification, first of all, which is a 98, 99% proof. We also have spending limits, we have self-exclusion, and we are working now for certification with the National Council on Problem Gambling. Interestingly, there is a lot more control online than there is at brick and mortar retailers, because we can put those limits on. And again, we would work with problem gambling folks to make certain that whatever we set up beyond what we have now with subscriptions would follow best practices for problem gambling.
Sure, follow-up question. I saw in the FIS that was associated with the bill that there would be an additional cost to the Commonwealth of $356,000. I think that was some additional full-time employees to manage. Can you speak to those numbers and those additional heads?
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Delegate Greason. That is looking at our friends at the Georgia Lottery, and Michigan and Illinois, our best guess. Those would be folks like digital accountants and perhaps a digital marketing person. We would certainly do our best to keep the numbers down. Right now, we have a partnership with a third-party company that is helping us run our subscriptions, and so a lot of those positions occur at that company, so we would not envision a large number of new employees.
Sure, and lastly, as you know, for my first 6 years here, maybe 5, I carried a bill regarding problem gambling, and every year we were unable to take money away without disturbing the Constitution of Virginia, which is something important to all of us. Would it be possible to take revenue associated with this particular initiative and redirect it towards problem gambling and trying to solve that problem sometime in the future?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Greason, we did talk, and we talked with the patron. The lottery would certainly be open to language that would require a small percentage, perhaps 0.5% or less, of the sales to go to problem gambling prevention or funding for treatment. Our general counsel is in the room, and she and I have talked about perhaps somewhere on line 46, 47 in 12 that we could add some language that any money that comes from internet sales, that a small portion be required to go. It's her belief, and obviously we would want Maria's opinion, that because this is a new endeavor, that we might be able to write the language in such a way that it would come out of the operation of this endeavor, and we wouldn't maybe run into the constitutional question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Anyone else here to speak in favor of this measure? Okay, anyone here to speak in opposition? Mr. O'Connor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michael O'Connor, representing Katrina's Petroleum Marketers and Convenience Stores. This is the second time in an 18-year career I have to oppose a bill that one of our fellow members has done. That's unfortunate, but we season. Two brief comments. I was a member of the study committee that Ms. Sato just mentioned. There was a minority report that did not agree with those findings that was not mentioned, and I would urge you all to read that. Secondly, the bill is before you takes the authority for selling lottery tickets, determining how they're made, out of this building and sends it over to an unelected lottery board. We don't think that's appropriate. We think that should remain within the purview. I have, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, someone who traveled from South Hill, who's a member of ours, who wanted to talk a little bit about the incidental sales. If you could address Charlie Parker, would be here for a minute. Parker.
Hi. Excuse me, I lost my voice just this morning. Charlie Parker from Parker Oil in South Hill, Virginia. Just wanted to say, we feel like we built up a lottery sales over the time, and we come to depend on a lot of customers coming in regularly and buying other items as well. So we really feel like, you know, despite all the assurances, I and many other retailers really feel strongly concerned about, you know, maintaining our commissions and our incidental sales other than lottery tickets. Thank you.
David Gale, Virginia Assembly Independent Baptist, as Delegate Greason mentioned, this, some of our concerns with regards to the problem gambling issues is something that's an issue that I don't know how we're going to get to. I'm still concerned about verification online. Kids are smart, and I just don't know how we're going to do that. I know people should have a choice. I prefer if they have a checking account, they have cash, that's the kind of money that should be being spent instead of using credit, which would create potentially a dangerous situation. And of course, I'm not for phonies either in other areas, so that's our concern.
Mr. Chairman, Chuck Duvall, I represent 7-Eleven. It's a 14-letter bill, and I'll give you 14-word bill. I'll give you 4 words that express our opposition. It's bad for business, and that's what it boils down to. We sell, 7-Eleven has about 700 stores in the state. We sell approximately, I think, 20% of the lottery tickets. We've had a good partnership with the lottery, want to continue that partnership, but there's no way that we see that an internet bill cannot adversely impact our business. The lottery, candidly, is not a moneymaker for retailers. It's a low-margin product, 5%, but you gotta have it. You know, your clientele expects you to have it. When they come in the door, they just don't buy a lottery ticket. They buy cigarettes, they buy soft drinks, and even sometimes they buy beer. And all of those are higher markup items, way higher markup items than the lottery ticket. So if we don't have that body in the door, we probably aren't gonna sell those other products. So that, in a nutshell, is our opposition, and we look forward to working with the lottery. We've had, you know, a lot of dialogue with them. It's a way to figure out how to keep the bricks and mortar people who brought them to the dance from day one, keep us whole, that's fine. Paying the commission isn't gonna keep us whole. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Steve Rossi, representing the Family Foundation of Virginia. And we oppose this as well for many of the same reasons ADA and some of the others have mentioned. I did find this online. You might find this interesting because Eddie just mentioned minors, you know, how smart they can be in getting around some of the stuff. This is from something called creditnet.com. I'm under 18, how can I get a credit card? And not only does it teach you how to get a credit card, but if you can't get a credit card, how you can get a debit card, and you can still work around some of these problems. A lot of parents issue credit cards to their minor children, so you could probably still, I'm not sure how it would work, how your system works, but you could probably still use your parent's credit card, posing as your parent if you have a credit card, you know, issued to them. So we find there's a lot of other problems as well as the addiction, gambling, and some of the other issues that were mentioned. So thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else here to speak on this measure? Okay, Delegate Robinson.
Yeah, I would like to do a response to the credit card, just that's another thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We do not allow credit card lottery sales now, and this bill would not change that. So currently, subscriptions can be purchased with bank transfers or with debit cards, and that would continue. So there's no question about credit cards.
Okay. Delegate Robinson, you have to
It's in the
Okay.
transfer.
Committee members? Any discussion, any thoughts? Chairman, entertain a motion. There's a motion laid on the table. Do I have a second? There's a second. Okay, non-debatable. All in favor of the motion laid on the table, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?